Imagine, if you will, that this is a Windows computer and you're going to use this computer to turn another computer into a Linux-based computer. It will be exactly the same process. We're going to download two programs. One's going to be the Linux ISO and the other one is going to be Etcher. Etcher turns the ISO into some sort of, it throws it onto the USB stick and makes it so you can boot from it, basically. We'll go to MXLinux. May as well put download. Download MXLinux. Now there's various ways of downloading it. I'm going to use a torrent. It's a quicker way of doing it. You could use a uTorrent over Windows LAN to do it. I'm actually on Linux right now, but it's basically the same process. And I'm going to use a torrent application called Transmission. And there's the version I want right there. Download MXLinux 19.2. Click there. It's going to open up the torrent. Open with Transmission. Click OK. Or open. It's going to download the MXLinux ISO. That will be going to the default place, which should be in the downloads. There it is there. It's going to start downloading that ISO. While that's happening, it's beginning to download now actually. Torrents are very quick. Now we need another application and it's called Etcher. And we'll just type in ISO. Oh no, we'll type in Linux, that'll do it. And that'll get us to the right page. There it is there. We want to download that. Download for Linux. By the way, well, it's downloading for Linux. Over Windows LAN, it will sense that you are Windows and it will download an executable file. I'm going to download that. I want to save it. Click OK. And that should be coming into my downloads folder as well. There it is there. There we go. The MXLinux ISO is downloaded. And Etcher is downloaded. Etcher is a zip file, so we'll just unzip that. Extract. Extract. Get your USB drive and throw it into the computer. Now we're going to run Etcher. We're going to flash from file. There's the file that we downloaded just there, MXLinux. So we'll go flash from file. We'll choose the MXLinux ISO. Open that. Select target, which is the USB drive. We'll just throw it into the computer. There we go. That's the one. There's actually two there, but I know it's this one here. Select. And we're going to flash that drive now. The flashing started. And if I look at the USB drive, there's a flashing light going on down there. And what it's doing, it's putting the ISO. It's putting the ISO there onto the flash drive. And our next step will be to go over to the computer we want to put Linux onto, and we're going to tell the computer to boot from the USB drive. Once the ISO is put onto the flash drive, Etcher will check it will validate it, and then the process is done. Etcher is finished and the ISO is being created. There's the ISO there, MXLinux Live. There's your ISO. Now it's time to go into the BIOS of the destination computer where the Linux operating system is going to be installed. Put the USB drive that's got the ISO on it into the computer that you want the MXLinux to be on and reboot that computer. Restart. Now be ready with your finger on the keyboard. Now in my case it's going to be press F12. Ready to press F12. F12, boot options. Now it's going to give us the opportunity to get into the BIOS. Okay, want to go into the BIOS setup, go to boot, select USB storage device, and we'll click apply, exit. Now a lot of BIOSes are different, so how it is on your computer I'm not too sure. F12, we want to boot from a USB storage device, I hope. There it is. Press enter. Now what's going to happen now, it's going to boot up into something that looks exactly like MXLinux, and then we're going to install MXLinux from there. This is a slow process because it's coming from the USB drive and not the hard drive. But there it is already. Now it's time to start the installation process. Just a little warning, everything on your hard drive is going to get erased during this process, so make sure you've backed up everything. There's the installer button right there. We're going to click that. Double click that button right there, that icon. And here we go. It's going to start the installation process. Basically, you just keep on clicking next. Have your password ready. I'm going to do a very basic install. Now, there's something called the Grub installer. I'm going to try to avoid that. But we'll just have to see how we go because I actually don't understand too much what to do with that. Custom install install on existing partitions. No, I'm going to go for auto install entire disk. That's what I'm going to go for. That's the SSD there. Click next. It's just warning you that all the data is going to get lost now. I'm happy with that. It's going to install Grub. I don't know quite what to do about that, but I'm going to leave it as it is. Just letting you know I'm using the pause button on the record device during this. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes. Time to hit next. See here it said pause for required operator input, which is next. Now you've got to give the computer a name. I'm going to call it the left computer because I've got 3 computers, a left computer, a middle computer and a right computer. I'm not too sure what the domain name is, so I'll just leave that as is. Samba server for MS Networks, I don't need that. I'm strictly Linux. Click next. Location, I saw New Zealand English. Time zone is Oceania, Pacific Ocean, Auckland. System class, I'm happy with that. Click next. Username, I'm going to call myself Peter. Password, have that password ready. Now this password, later on you'll become something called a super user, and you'll need this password when you do, the computer requires the password of the super user. Auto login, that means you don't need the password to log into your computer. The installation process is almost finished. It doesn't take too long. There, it's done. We've installed Linux on the computer. Now we've got to reboot the computer and go back into the BIOS and tell the computer not to boot from the USB drive ever again. So we'll finish that. We'll click here. It's going to reboot, ready to press F12 again. That didn't work quite as well as I wanted. I don't think it's going to... See, Alt F1, I'll press that. See what happens. Nothing's happening. What I'm going to do is turn the computer off. I'm going to turn the computer off. Just by pressing the key for a period of time. I pull the USB drive out. I'm turning the computer back on again. And I'm ready to press F12. F12. I'm going to go into the BIOS again. Go into BIOS. Go to boot. And I don't want to boot from the USB drive again. I don't want to boot from the USB drive. So I select that. And I'm in the boot part of the BIOS. I can apply that and go exit. Now with a bit of luck it's going to boot straight into Linux. There we go. We've happily installed Linux on a computer. Not too hard, is it?